the idea of athletes being paid. Do you think that will ever happen at the NCAA level?
Everybody's making money.
Everybody, except the kids.
Except the kids.
Except the kids.
Access to, at full cost covered, one of the most valuable things on earth, a degree from an American university.
According to Dana Rascher and Andrew Schwarz, the NCAA's claim that amateurism is an essential component of its product offering rests on the assumption that there is demand for amateur sports opposed to collegiate sports in general, regardless of whether the athlete gets paid. Rascher and Schwarz also point out that as the financial stakes in intercollegiate sports continues to rise, the issue of the NCAA's efforts to restrain student-athlete compensation, particularly those in football and men's basketball, grows increasingly important. In order to better understand the significance of amateurism, a research study was conducted to measure the public feeling and perception of student-athlete compensation. In other words, what drives people's interest in collegiate athletics? Is it amateurism, school affiliation, or something entirely different? To understand what drives people's consumption of college athletics, a 22-question survey was created and broken down into 4 sections. The first, sports consumption, was used to gauge how much college football and basketball people watch on TV and in person. The second, what would you do, was the scenario-based section. The third was NCAA and compensation. And the fourth, about you, was used to gather demographic information about the respondent. An invitation was sent out via SurveyMonkey to 150 people. 109 responded. 11 people washed out along the way, resulting in an 89.9% completion rate and a final sample size of 98 people. The gender split for the survey was 57% women and 43% men. The overwhelmingly majority of respondents were in the 18 to 25-year-old range. Nearly half of the respondents had completed at least a bachelor's degree. Surprisingly, just over 40% of respondents had an annual income of over $100,000, while the next largest group made less than $30,000 per year. Finally, 55.1% of respondents were current or former student athletes.
I just don't see how we can stay the course, so to speak, with the current definition of amateurism.
What drives college sports consumerism? Is it truly amateurism as the NCAA claims? And what is the public's view of compensating athletes? Participants were asked whether they felt amateurism was necessary in collegiate sports. Amateurism was deemed necessary by a 62 to 38% margin. Interesting correlations began to appear. For those who felt amateurism was necessary, they were also likely to A. value school affiliation the most and amateurism the least, B. not leave a collegiate game despite knowing that players are being compensated, C. mark the biggest difference between the pros and college as school affiliation. It is also important to note that 47% said that their interest in collegiate sports would lower if they found out athletes were monetarily compensated. The only significant difference apparent for those that saw amateurism as not necessary was that 84% of these individuals would maintain the same level of interest despite the compensation of student athletes. Although participants may have indicated strong cognitive beliefs around amateurism, their opinion did not affect what was most important for them about college athletics, nor did it indicate a change in behavior for whether they would leave the game or not. In order to determine how well fans value their experience, essentially in terms of ticket prices, respondents were given a scenario. With excellent seats to watch their college alma mater play a conference rival, how much money would it take them to sell their seat? Face value of their ticket was $150. Roughly 10% stated that they would not sell their tickets regardless of the amount offered. 3 outliers were removed, $2, $10, and $4,000, in order to avoid overskewed results. It should also be noted that 4 respondents stated that they would sell their ticket for approximately $1,000. Of the 90 responses, 65.6% of respondents answered one of $3 amounts, $300, $200, and $500. 31 respondents stated that they would sell their ticket for $300, twice the face value of the ticket. Once the outliers were removed, the average answer from respondents was $334.73, a little over twice the face value of the ticket. 66 out of the 90 respondents answered dollar amounts below the average. about 12% of respondents felt that they would sell their ticket for face value at $150 or below, revealing that only a small amount of the sample put little value on this excellent seat and were likely to sell. The remaining 78% valued making a profit on selling their ticket. 55 out of the 90 respondents put a value of $300 or more on a $150 ticket. They would only sell their ticket for at least double the face value, which shows that the majority of the population values the experience enough that only a large profit would push them to sell their ticket. If you found out that college players were being given monetary compensation for a game you were attending, would you leave? Breaking data up by respondents' age groups, there appears to be a split decision between 41 and 55-year-olds. Despite the divide in this age group, a majority of respondents claim they would not leave the game if they found out that college players were receiving monetary compensation. By studying responses of current and former student athletes, one can see that a majority of respondents would not leave the game. Overall, a vast majority of respondents, 83.5%, state that they would not leave a game if they found out that players were being compensated. If college athletes received monetary compensation, what would your level of interest be? Surprisingly, results suggest that women have stronger feelings toward the compensation of student athletes. A higher percentage of women than men stated that their interest would decrease. However, an overall majority of respondents said that their interest in college athletics would remain the same. The survey suggests that former and current student athletes would maintain the same interest in college athletics, even if athletes were compensated. According to survey results, 32.3% of all respondents said their interest in college athletics would decrease if athletes were compensated. 60.6% of respondents said their interest would stay the same, while 7% said their interest would even increase. One can therefore assume that fans will continue to be at collegiate games whether student athletes are compensated or not.
I didn't feel like a college kid anymore. I felt like a professional athlete that wasn't getting paid.
Respondents were asked when they thought student athletes should be compensated. The split was fairly even, with 44% in favor of student athletes getting paid while in school, as compared to 48% who thought they should be paid only after they graduate. 8% of respondents said student athletes should be paid both while in school and after graduation. Student athletes could be compensated in a variety of ways: scholarships, a stipend, endorsements, appearance fees, and a percentage of revenue for television and merchandise. More than 85% of respondents felt athletes should receive a scholarship. In addition, 21% said that athletes should get two forms of compensation, and a small portion, 5%, thought athletes should receive all 6 forms of compensation listed. Further analysis revealed of the people who indicated all forms of compensation, most were former student athletes. None of them considered amateurism necessary to the NCAA, and all of them were okay with only football and basketball players getting paid.
A truly unique model of athletics. Nowhere else in the world is there anything like American intercollegiate athletics. I know that I feel very good and comfortable with the model that we have in place. I don't see it as exploitative at all. I see it as a great enabler.
As the data implies, collegiate, or school affiliation, is what inevitably drives one's interest in NCAA athletics. Although there appears to be attachment to the idea of amateurism, these feelings don't seem to have much of an effect on people's consumption. The study suggests that fans are content with, or already have a tolerance for, the idea of paying college athletes. Although the survey was executed effectively, there are a number of weaknesses that compromise the study's overall value. First and foremost is the definition of collegiate amateurism. It was apparent only after the survey was complete that not all participants understood its true meaning. A simple clarification could have drastically affected the results presented. Looking back, it could have also been beneficial to employ differing ticket scenarios, perhaps one question pertaining to the value with the compensation of players and another without. Finally, it is important to consider the impact of distribution. Although the online survey was efficient, a study conducted in person may have provided a greater degree of feedback. With that said, the study does afford opportunity for further research. Examples include follow-up interviews, focus groups, and surveys tailored to different groups of people. Going forward, it would be interesting to explore other questions relating to amateurism, compensation, and the NCAA. For example, given that money often encourages student athletes to leave college early and go pro, if they had received compensation in college, that is above their scholarship, would they have stayed longer? The public view of the NCAA could also be explored by asking individuals if they believe the association to be a government institution, an active monopoly, or that membership is voluntary.